and welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute since I've posted and I apologize for that. I've been in a little bit of a crafty rut. Today I have my final Christmas card of the year featuring some really pretty products from the Scrappy Tails Crafts store. Here's a look at the Pink Fresh Studio ink colors that I'm using on my project today. I wanted to go with something a little bit more non-traditional and vibrant. I have these Assorted Christmas leaves, which is an older die release from Scrappy Tails, but it's still beautiful and relevant nonetheless. I'm going to start with my pinks, and I have one of my small blending brushes from Amazon. I will link them and all of the products that I used in the description box below. When I put this color down, it's going to look very blotchy. So I started with my raspberry, and then I'm blending out with a bubble gum. These vibrant pinks are really going to add quite a bit of pop of color. I'm going to keep my background pretty clean and simple with white die cuts and a white card base. So this is really going to allow these colors to just really pop off the page and add a lot of beauty to the card. I blended back out with that raspberry, as you can see, and what I'm doing this time, I added just more of a softness, so I'm being a little bit more light-handed and just kind of blending that in. It's still going to look blotchy, but when I set it aside and once it dries, it will blend together beautifully. We're going to move on to our second piece of foliage. Now the first one, I do end up cutting a third one off camera, and I did do some ink blending on that as well, so I had 3 pieces of the larger foliage. And then this one has little berries on it, so I'm just trying to work around the berries. I started with I think it's candied violet, and then this one is soft lilac. I'm using the bigger brush. The smaller brushes are going to give you more of a concentration of color, and then the larger that your brush is, the softer the application is going to be. So I really wanted that deep color at the base of all of the leaves for my foliage, which is why I went with more of my smaller brushes. And then I'm blending this out with the candy violet. I'll go back in. I think I ended up cutting it out off camera, but I did go back in with the bubble gum and I just added those little berries back in, but I end up covering it up anyway, so it really was for naught because they are at the bottom of the stems. So I'm just blending the color out like I did with my first foliage. And then here we're coming in with the seaside. Again, I have that very small brush going along the base of each of the leaves. And then I'm just adding that real high concentration of color. I'll come back in with my second color, which is going to be, the colors are very similar. There's a slight variation as it dries back that makes this just a little bit softer. So because the leaf is a little bit smaller, I went with my medium-sized brush and I'm just blending those 2 colors together. I can't remember what that second one is. I did share it at the beginning of this video, so if you want to go back and take a look, you can look at what that second blue color is. But I'm going back, same process, just blending it out using a much lighter hand, not adding as much ink to the bottom layer. These look super dark, but again, they're going to dry back. We're going to move on. I wanted to add the Sweet Little Deer from this year's release. This is Santa, Layering Santa and Friends. It comes with Santa and Mrs. Claus, and then there is also this Sweet Little Deer, and I wanted to use this deer. I didn't use it when I created my Santa house, and so I wanted to add this sweet little image onto my card. For this, I'm going to do a little bit of Copic Coloring. I'm starting with an E53, I believe, and I'm coloring most of the body. And then I'm going to add the shadows. This has a lot of detailed lines where shadows would be. So Sabrina over at Scrappy Tails has included some of that detail into her dies. And so I'm just kind of following those areas where I think that the shadowing would be where the legs are bending underneath the body, over to the right side of the head. And I'm using my E55 marker to go ahead and blend that out. I'll use the E53 again to make sure that I have a smooth blend. I'm not being too terribly particular about this because it is more of a smaller image, but it is going to be the focal point of my wreath. So I am going to use those foliage pieces, those Christmas dies with the foliage. I am going to be using those to create a semicircle on my card, and this deer is going to be the center of that wreath. For the inside of, or for the chest, and then I believe there's another area, the tail, that I added these lighter colors. I do have the markers up on the screen. And so I went with more of a buff color for the chest. So there's a layering die piece for the chest. And then I'll use my glue to add the lighter portion of the face that I colored, and I'll do the same thing with the chest. And then there's a little collar for this deer, and for the collar I'm going to use the soft lilac. So I'm going to, I believe it's a soft lilac, I'm going to just bring some of that purple tone back in. I'm using, I believe it is an E25 marker, going with darker antlers. This is going to give the deer a little bit of dimension. And so I'm going around the outer edges with my Copic marker, trying to remove some of that white that would be showing through on the sides that didn't get any of that coloring on it. And then for the nose and the hooves, I am going to use a Copic pen, and it's a black. I'll use a black one to color in the nose and the little hooves. And then there's some detail on the face. So if you look at it right now, it's kind of lost, and I'm going to use a brown Copic pen. Here's the black one. I am going to use a brown Copic pen. Both of these, I believe, are .03. I got I think it's a 4 or a 5 pack, so there's different fine and wider tips on these. I tend to lean more towards the .03 when I'm working on detail work on the faces of some of my die cut images. So I'm going to add the eye. The eye is closed, and then I will come back in with that brown again, and I am going to, there's a little eyebrow up there, and I'll add that little eyebrow detail. There is an inner die piece for the ear, and so I'm using an R12 for that, and then I'll attach that little piece. But I also want to add some cheeks. I love adding little cheeks to my critters, so I use that R12, and now I'm going to add some of the detail. So the die does have the embossed detail for the little fawn spots, and then I'll use this is, I believe, a 10 Sakura gel roll pen. I'm using that to create some freckles over that blushing that I added to the cheeks. We're going to add that inner ear, which is a really little tiny piece, and then I'm going to bring in my blending brush, and we'll color in the right there, we're going to color in that collar. So I just used what was left on my brush to add that little bit of color. And I'll carefully get it off my mat. That was a, sometimes they like to stick and not move, and I can't get them picked up, so I kind of scoot them off those little mats. All right, so here's all my pieces. Here is the triangle pattern cover plate. I went ahead and I had a scrap piece of paper, and I went ahead and die cut it using that triangle die. That is a cover plate that was from a release a year before last, and I thought that it would add just a little bit of detail. It kind of looks like snowflakes, adding a little bit more of that clean and simple layering that I like on my cards. And so I'm going to adhere it to the center, and I'm adhering it horizontally. Now there is going to be a slight overhang. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. And I'm going to bring in my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, and I'm just going to use that to trim off the excess that's hanging over the side. And then we're going to start building our half wreath, getting an idea where we want all of our pieces to fit. So I really wanted something for my final card that was just going to have that beautiful non-traditional pop of color. I went with a lot of soft colors this year. If you followed me, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, I do create other cards that I don't necessarily have a video or a blog post for. So I will have my Instagram account linked in the description box below. I have some really pretty Christmas cards that I've created that, as I mentioned, I don't have a video for, but you might be interested in seeing. So I'm trying to figure out, I did cut out my sentiment, and I cut the sentiment out 3 times. So it did come with a die cut. This is just one from my stash, and I used that same I think it's seashore ink to stamp the sentiment so it would match that pop of blue, since I have more of those pinky tones on the card, and I just had the one leaf that is colored with the blue, so I thought I would incorporate more of that blue into the card. And I'm just trying to figure out where I want these pieces. Now these ones up here, they're going to end up they're going to end up falling off when I use my press and seal. So I did have my press and seal that I did use for this panel to try to lift up all of my pieces. I am going to glue mine directly to my card panel. Surprise, surprise, I'm not adding any dimension, but when you do use the press and seal, you will have the opportunity to add foam tape to the back of some of your pieces. I chose not to, so I'm just going to get that piece of press and seal, make sure that I have it securely down, and then carefully lift up all of my pieces. I will use my art glitter glue. There's one of those blue pieces that kind of slipped away. There's going to be one more. And once I get this down, I do feel like I need another one of those blue leaves. There's an area over by the deer that just looks a little bit bare, and so I will bring out my die cutting machine, and I am going to cut one more of those and add it. Isn't that pretty? I just think that these colors are just really beautiful for a Christmas card. I think that it, you know, especially for those that are in the snow country and have absolutely no color or foliage, this little bright spot to their day is really going to bring a smile. All right, I need to glue that deer back down. And I did layer up the deer as well, so I cut the deer 2 more times, the base layer of that deer, so that it had a little bit of that chipboard feel. You know, I like some sort of dimension, even if I'm not using foam tape. I do like to add layers of cardstock to give a little bit of a lift to some of the pieces on my cards. And here's where I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't know, there just seems like there's something missing over there on the right hand side. And I'm going to move that piece, and I end up tearing it just a little bit, but I'm able to camouflage it here behind this leaf, and then I'm going to cut out that second one. So I do have a little Anna Griffin die machine that I keep by the side of my desk. I love this little machine. It's an electric die cutting machine. You can see that I have the slimline plates. I really don't use the regular plates with it. I did make the investment in purchasing those slimline plates, and they have served me well. I've had that machine for 2 years, and I still absolutely love that machine. So if you're looking for a little die cutting machine that is just a powerhouse, that one is perfect. I cannot do my 3D embossing folders in that, and I cannot do any of my glimmer hot foil things, but for just regular die cutting that I do most often, it is perfect. So there we have it. I've tucked in that final piece. I have these little gems that I'm going to add to camouflage some of the areas where the leaves are meeting, but there's a little bit of distance between them. I'm also going to add some of the smaller ones. Remember, we talked about those purple leaves that I colored that had the little berries. I'm going to use some of the smaller ones of these little gems and add those as if they were the berries. And once I get these attached, this is the end of my Christmas card making for the year. Again, all of the products are available in the Scrappy Tails Crafts store. I will have them linked in the description box below. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you do get a notification when I do upload my next video. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.